I think the most important thing to understand about the legal regulation of youth sport is that a lot of the context of youth sport takes place at school. And particularly when you're at a public school setting, it is completely different than when you're at a private school, when you're going and playing in a rec league that's not government owned and operated, because of the legal protections that you have. And it's, I think, a really interesting example way you could describe this is if you look at the NFL, for example. The NFL is a private employer, no government relation. If the NFL says, hey, we don't want you protesting during the national anthem, right? Which is a hot topic, right? It's something from some years ago, but it was a big issue. The NFL can do that. The NFL can say, hey, you're our employee. We don't want you doing that. But how about a high school, public high school? Now we're talking about the government censoring free speech. Obviously, student speech is viewed in a different lens than government censorship of speech in different contexts. But still, at the end of the day, we're talking about a state actor, a public institution, whether it's at the college level, at the high school level, saying, we don't want you to do that. And some really, really fascinating cases have come up in the free speech context, in the due process context, where somebody's kicked off a team. And I think that is the most important thing to understand about the youth sports legal regulation, particularly, again, in schools. And if you look at like high school sports, this is really present, where maybe 80% or so of schools in a high school, any given high school athletic association, are going to be public schools. So they can regulate their student athletes differently than a private school could. And that is so important to the legal regulation of all of this, because if you have government intervention in some aspect, you've got all sorts of constitutional protections for the athletes that come with that.